All right. So whenever you open up MATLAB for the very first time, this is what you guys should see. It should default to this. If it doesn't default to this, make sure you email me and say, hey, Chris, I got no clue what this is defaulting to. Okay. All right. I am going to blow up the font and all that stuff so that way you guys can see everything. But every time you start, okay, what you're going to do is in the upper left-hand corner, you're going to click on where it says new script. Okay. What it's going to do is it's automatically going to create a file, and I know you guys can't read it. It says untitled.m. Okay. MATLAB stores files as .m files. That's like the unique file type for MATLAB. What it'll do is when you save it, it'll store it right over here. And this is basically like your virtual file space. Down here, it's actually going to show you what's stored in the variables. Okay, this doesn't matter. This does matter a little bit. This really matters what's up here. Okay. The other thing that's important is when you execute, all your output is going to come out down at the bottom of the screen down here. Okay, so and if you guys can't see it, it's going to be smaller font. Obviously, when you're home, it'll be bigger. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow up the font really quickly. You guys do not have to blow up the font when you get home. All right, so but that's just so you guys can see everything. General, I think. Come on. Nope. I'm trying to get there. Appearance. Oh, there it is. Okay. Is that large enough for folks to see? I mean, if you guys can read my handwriting, I guess you could easily read that. Okay. Really quickly, guys, just to show you how MATLAB operates. Okay. Let's say I do 1 plus 15. Okay. So this is just really, really basic, just to show you guys how to execute code. Okay. So you type in a command. What you're going to do is you're going to click on editor, and then you're going to go run. Okay. The very first time you're going to have to save the file as some name. Try to keep the name simplistic. Okay. Because if you start putting in too many numbers and characters, MATLAB won't execute the code. Okay. So especially if you use like ampersands or something like the special characters, it just doesn't like those. I'm going to call it class example 1. So class X1, I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to run this. Apparently MATLAB needs time to think about 1 plus 15. It needs a lot of time. There it goes, finally. It's actually just showing you the file name down here. Yep. Mercifully. Thank you, MATLAB. I appreciate your exquisite knowledge. Yeah, really. It does get, by the way, it's the first time I've run it on this machine. Okay. Once you've run it several times, it'll be a lot quicker. Okay. So that's how you can execute code in MATLAB. It's really easy. Okay. Let's say I wanted to know what 2 plus 15 was. Okay. When I run it, yeah, you have to be careful because what happens is MATLAB stores all the previous instances as well when you run it. Okay. What I always do is I start every file with CLC and clear all. And that's going to do two things, those commands. CLC is going to clear this command window down here. Okay. CLC or clear all, excuse me, is going to clear the variables. Okay. So that way when you start, because sometimes what happens is computer programming, it'll remember in the physical memory what your last instance was. Okay. And then it screws everything up. All right. So if I execute it again and run it, it's thinking again. Still thinking. Still thinking. Shake it down.
That's just the monitor, not the computer, though.
I know. Actually, I think the computer is actually embedded in there. Yeah. So it's a single. Holy smokes, that was torturous. All right. Hopefully that doesn't happen all the time. Yeah, really. By the way, if you put a semicolon, one thing about MATLAB is it's actually pretty smart. And I know you guys might not be able to read it, but it'll actually give you like hint messages. So this says add a semicolon to hide the output. Okay, so if you put a semicolon after almost every statement, it won't show up down here. And sometimes that's good because we don't want to see everything. We just want to see the output. Okay, so just to show you, if I put a semicolon here and a semicolon here, I'm going to try to run it. Oh boy, I know. I don't know if we have 15 years to wait for this. So it actually worked really nicely. Okay, so notice there was no output because I suppressed it. Okay. One of the first questions I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to ask you guys to use MATLAB to approximate a fairly rigorous sort of algebraic or an expression numerically. And then I'm going to ask you to round it to 6 decimal places. Okay, so that should be one of the first things we did. All right. So just as an example, like a really basic sort of thing. And basically the same way you would input into your calculator, that's how you would probably input into MATLAB. All right. So let's say I had like this expression. Let's say I had like arctan of 3 minus e squared divided by, let's say, sine of pi 13ths plus log base 2 of 17. Okay, and I want to evaluate that. I think that pretty much has everything that we would need to know. That's a pretty ugly value. Okay, it's something that nobody in this class should know off the top of their head. If you do, you have way too much time on your hands. So here's how I'm going to put that into MATLAB. I'm going to say P equals, all right, and I'm just using P just because I can, all right, I can use any letter. In parentheses, MATLAB recognizes arctan as atan, so atan of 3, minus MATLAB recognizes E as exp, okay, so these are some syntax, and by the way, there is, I'll show you guys a little bit later, but there is a huge formula card that you can use for MATLAB. So it has all the commands on it. So I don't expect you guys to know every single command, okay? I'll have that formula card for you. Divided by, what do we say, sine of pi 13ths. And then was it plus? All right, now when you put a log into MATLAB, you're going to use this change of base formula. You're going to use log 17 over log 2. Okay, so that's how you guys can, in fact, you can do that in any calculator. Okay, you guys might remember seeing that in pre-calc, you might not, but that's how you evaluate like in your calculator, like a weird logarithm. Okay, so I'm just going to say log 17 divide log 2. All right, now if I execute this, oh boy. All right, gave me the number pretty quick, didn't it? It doesn't give us the number to 6 decimal places. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to format it by using a function fprintf. Okay, so I'm going to suppress this and I'm going to say fprintf, and I'm just going to say the answer is, I'm going to say the answer to question 1A is, and I'm going to say %.6f. And then I'm going to use a /, okay? And then over here, I'm going to say comma P. Okay, now let me explain what all that does really quickly. All right, fprintf is basically your output statement. Okay, so that just prints out stuff in MATLAB. Anything that's inside of these marks, the accent marks or the apostrophes, that's literally text. It's getting printed to the screen exactly like that. This %.6 means 6 decimal places. F means floating point, okay? For those of you folks that are computer science majors, floating point, that's just decimal, okay? So that just means you write in the decimal as opposed to the integer notation. This / means I'm going to a new line, okay? And then the comma P just means that I'm calling this variable, okay? So when I execute it, / not, it is valid. Weird. A lone trailing / is not a valid control character, but it did exactly what I wanted it to do. So I don't know what happened there. Let me run it again. Huh. And if I put the other / in there, it just does that. That doesn't help. All right, weird. Well, anyway, that should work out pretty nicely. Okay, so that's how you guys can get some output and you can format it. Okay, so, and you can do this with any answer. Okay, as I'm going through, what I'll do is I'll continuously use fprintf statements just to make sure that if you want to get pretty answers, you can do this. Okay, For those of you guys that are engineers, did you guys do stuff like this in your engineering 103 class? Okay, so for a lot of you guys, it's familiar, but it's not like you do it every day. And for those of you guys that have never seen it before, it's what, 2 lines of code. It's not that bad. Okay. Another thing I'm going to ask you guys to do is to graph functions. Okay. So let's say for some reason I wanted you guys to graph a pretty simplistic function. Let's say x to the -2 sine x. Okay. And let's say I want to graph that over the domain, because obviously the domain is 0 to infinity. Let's say from like 0 to 2. Okay, so and we can't plot it at 0. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, there's 2 ways to plot. I'm going to show you guys the easier of the 2 ways to plot something. Okay, first. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable as a symbolic variable. I'm going to say sims x. Okay. What that does is it makes the variable x a symbolic variable, which means I can do all kinds of fun stuff with that. Okay, and I'll show you guys more stuff in a minute. I'm going to define f to be x raised to the -2 times sine of x. All right. And I'm going to put that -2 in parentheses just to make sure. You have to be careful with MATLAB. You have to define multiplication between every single function, except for coefficients that are numerical. Okay. So yeah, MATLAB is kind of dumb when it comes to like variables. Okay. It doesn't assume. Okay. So just be careful with that. All right. A lot of times if you make a syntax error, it's because you forgot to multiply something. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the function EasyPlot x. Okay. So I'm going to, or as EasyPlot f, excuse me. And what that's going to do is it's going to plot this function. Okay. So let me run it. And then over here, eventually, there it is. Okay. Now I didn't give it over the domain, right, that I wanted. Okay. So to put the domain in that I want, which was from what, 0 to 2, or was it 0? I can't remember. So I'll just say comma 0, comma 2, and then I'll run it again. And there it is. Okay. So pretty cool. Now we can plot functions using MATLAB. Okay. It's not all that spectacular, but it is what it is. Okay. One thing I'll also recommend is that before you actually do the EasyPlot, use this command, figure, and then whichever number you're on. So I'm going to call that figure 1, and it's just going to default to figure 1. But what's going to happen is MATLAB will overwrite. Okay. So if you keep doing EasyPlots, it won't actually show you all of them. It'll only show you the latest one. But if you define them each as their own figures, then you'll see them all. Okay, so if I run this again, I think it's going to call it figure 1. It's not going to do anything different. All right. I can label this. So check out some of the things that we can add to this graph. So I can turn a grid on. I can label the x-axis. So I'm going to say x label, and I'm just going to call it x-axis. I can label the y-axis by y-label, surprise. And I'm going to call that the y-axis, since we've been doing that for like, what, 19 to 22 years of our lives. I'm going to give it a title. The title is this graph. All right, there we go. And we can execute it. And so notice what it does. It churches it up a little bit. So now we have titles on the axes and we have a title on the graph. All right. One thing that's really cool is you could actually save this as an image. So if you ever had to do a report or something like that, you could just import it into a Word doc or something like that. Okay. I do this actually pretty frequently when I'm doing publications and things like that. It works out really nicely. Okay. If you want to plot more than one function, okay, on the same graph. So check this out. What I would do is, in fact, let me just do a whole new one. Okay, so sims x, let's call f equal to exp of x, and let's call g equal to log x. Okay. And if I wanted to plot them both on the same plot graph, so first of all, I'm going to say figure 2. and then I'm going to say easy plot F. Then I'm going to type hold on. And then I'm going to type easy plot G. And then I'm going to type hold off. Okay. And then I'm going to run this. Notice I didn't do any fancy stuff. And it's thinking. Then there it goes. Didn't give me a good domain for that. I don't like the domain it gave me. So let me put in the domain. Let's try what? Like -3 to 3. That should work out pretty well. Copy, paste. All right, I'll run this again. There it is. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. I could probably fix the range on this too. So I think, let me make the range from -3 to +3. I think if you do this, that'll fix the range too. Let me see if that works. And it might take a second for it to, yeah, there we go. That's the picture I finally wanted to see, because obviously they're inverses of one another. So, but if you ever want to alter the range, what you guys can do is you can just enter a third and fourth parameter. If you ever have to put something on the same graph though, I'd recommend using the exact same domains for each of those. Okay. All right. So everybody good with being able to plot functions using the easy plot function? Pretty cool, right? Now we know how to plot multiple functions on the same graph if we want to. By the way, we can plot as many functions on the same graph as we wanted. So
what is hold on or hold off again?
So if you exclude those, what these do is these make it so that they go on the same graph. Okay. If you excluded this, let me show you what happens. And I just ran it. Notice what it'll do is it'll get rid of this because it overrid it. So there's no hold. Okay. But if you put the hold on and the hold off, and notice it'll come back. Okay. So that just makes sure that those functions go on the same graph.
For the 6 decimal place one, because I struggled with that because I had your winter.
Yeah.
class.
Sorry.
I struggled with like getting the 6 decimal places. Wouldn't it be like \n? I remember having to.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. That's why it's not giving like the value control thing. Okay, that's what it is. I don't know why I didn't think about that. So yeah, thank you.
I
Yeah.
remember having to type like that long, like
Yeah.
series of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm glad somebody actually learned something from me, because apparently I can't remember stuff. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
I used to use like the variable, and then you can set the domain and how much you increment it.
Right. Yeah. You can do that as well. So
How do you open up the second window, like for the graphs? Because I always have them in pop-ups.
yeah, they just come up. But if, let's say these close out, like something like that, then what I always do is I just run it again, and it should just pop up here.
Okay.
If it doesn't come up, Luke, then you might have to go to like home and then the layout.
Okay.
And then what you guys want to do is, if that ever happens, just go to the default layout right here. Okay. And what that'll do is that'll get you back to like the way it's supposed to look. Okay. Because I know that happens to me all the time. I close stuff out and like, this thing will close out and I can't find it. And then I start shaking the computer screen. So yeah. Okay. Other questions, guys? All right. So next thing I want to show you is probably the last thing we get to show you guys today is how do you use MATLAB to do symbolic manipulations? Okay. So this is actually one of the coolest things you can do with MATLAB, is because you could get it to do factoring. You could get it to do rational expression, simplification, all that stuff. All right. So let's say you wanted to factor something. Okay. Oh, and one other thing really quickly while I'm on it. If you want to comment something, okay, what you can do is you can highlight everything, go up here to this %. Anytime you type a % in MATLAB, that's a comment. Okay. So that basically what that means is it's there, but MATLAB just ignores it. Okay. This is really good. Like if you're struggling with code and you want to send it to me, you're like, hey, I just can't get this freaking thing to work. Here's my code. Okay. And I'm happy to look things over. Okay. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do is debug code. No, it definitely isn't. That's why I quit my very first job out of college, because that's all I did. But anyway, so if I want to go ahead, I'm going to do a Sims X, and let's say I want to factor something. So let's say I want to factor something like, let's say like m to the 6th minus m to the 5th minus 2m to the 4th. Okay, and I want to factor that. I probably need a Sims m in there as well. All right. And then I'm going to run that. Missing parentheses apparently. So factor, I don't know if I need a comma m in there. No. I don't want
Is there
to.
like 2 times m to the 4th?
Yeah. Jeez. I need to quit. It's exactly what it is. Yeah. So what it'll do, guys, and I know it's tough to see, is that it'll actually list out the factors. Okay. So
in this case, you don't need the X. In some.
right, but I am going to use X later.
Yeah.
Now notice, guys, if I don't have Sims M and I try to run it, okay, it'll remember that I made an M of symbolic variable. Okay, as long as you define it once. But if I did a clear all and I tried to do that, it wouldn't work. Okay, so that's how you guys can factor a polynomial using MATLAB. Just use that factor function. Not surprising. Okay, if I wanted to solve an equation, okay, what I could do is I could solve. Let's say I'm going to solve this. Double equals 0. Okay, so whenever you solve something in MATLAB, you have to use a double equal. Okay, so double equal basically means that you're trying to solve an equation. Okay, single equal means you're assigning to something. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is comma m. Okay, because I need to know what variable I'm solving for. So if I run this, notice it gives me the 6 solutions: -1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2. Okay. So that's pretty cool that now if you guys have a really tough equation that you're solving in another class, you could just use MATLAB to get the answer for it. Okay. Now your teacher probably wants to see work, but at least you know how to do it. Okay. If I want to simplify an expression, I just type in simplify. So let me make an X and a Y. So let's say I want to simplify something like 3 times X plus 2 plus Y minus 5 times 2x plus 3y minus 7. Okay, so I can simplify that. And again, as long as I've defined both x and y as variables. All right, so as symbolic variables, if I execute this, okay, there it is. It gives me the simplified version of that. Okay, this can be helpful sometimes because a lot of times MATLAB will do operations. It won't fully simplify things. Okay, so that function can be really helpful. I could do the same thing with a rational expression. So if I want to simplify something like quantity x squared minus 4 divided by something like x squared minus 8x plus 16. All right. And I just go ahead and execute it. Okay. It'll completely simplify it. It'll factor it for you. All right. I probably should use x squared minus 16 to make this a little bit better. Let's try that. There we go. So it'll simplify it completely. So what it'll do is it'll factor the polynomials and it'll cancel out the common factors for you. Okay. Again, this can be good if you're working on something pretty rigorous and you can just go ahead and simplify it that way. Okay. If I want to find derivatives, okay, MATLAB can find derivatives for us. So let's say I want to find derivative of x to the x with respect to x, right? Most of us forgot how to take the derivative of x to the x. You probably have to use logarithmic differentiation to do it. All right, but MATLAB does it really quickly. It gives us the answer. Okay. One thing to be cognizant of is that in MATLAB, log is ln. Okay, so just remember that. But again, I have that sheet that I'll show you guys in a few moments. If I want to do an integral in MATLAB, so remember we had, what was it we had earlier? We had the square root of 1 minus x squared, right? And we didn't want to do that. So if I want to integrate that with respect to X, I could just run it and it gives me the answer right here, okay, really quickly. If I want to put bounds in there, so let's say I want to try to integrate it from like 0 to a half. Okay, then I just run it and it gives me the precise answer of that as well, okay? So again, really cool that MATLAB could do all of this for us. All right, one last thing that I want to show you before I release you. That sounded pretty weird. Sorry about that. If I want to try to make it into a really nice looking statement, okay, I'm going to say P equals this, and I'm going to suppress it. And I can say something like F print F, the answer to this problem is use a %S/n, comma P. All right. For those of you that are computer science nerds, %S is string. Okay, so it doesn't even look at it. It's just basically text. So whatever it outputs, that's what's going to be the output for this. Okay, so if I execute this, this is a really nice way to make the answer look pretty. Okay. For those of you guys that have used MATLAB in the past, have your teachers made you format your output, or do they just make you get the output for it? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Okay, just get the output. Okay. I know in computer science, for anybody that takes like comp sci 1 and 2, they usually make you format the outputs. Okay. All right, guys. So I'm going to stop here with this stuff. We still have 2 more types of problems to finish up, and I'll do those after the examination. So I'll do those next Wednesday. Okay. For this weekend, though, just make sure you guys study for the examination and work on those 2 assignments.